Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Alanna McCargo, who is the president of Ginnie Mae. And welcome, Alanna. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
So, you've been on the job now for almost 16 months, I believe. And
Yes.
let's start to remind people the differences between Ginnie Mae and Fannie Mae, because for the average person, we hear about it a lot. We don't fully understand how it, in essence, is different in practice.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So, again, thanks for having me. It's interesting. The history is that Ginnie Mae and Fannie Mae actually used to be one entity under the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And back in 1968, Ginnie Mae was spun off as an government corporation, still part of HUD, and Fannie Mae became independent, non-governmental housing agency. And so the biggest difference between the two agencies now is that Ginnie Mae 100% supports all of the federal government's mortgage programs, and Fannie Mae operates in the conventional market. And the key here is the government programs are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. So we have a very explicit guarantee that serves the work that we do here at Ginnie Mae.
So, Alanna, talk about what you found when you came into the role, because obviously we're in a tough economy. You're the first, you had four acting presidents, I believe, prior. Is that right, to you coming in? So,
Yeah,
Alanna, tell me what you found when you came in, and what was your mission?
sure. Well, you're hitting on a really important piece. My entry here came at a really, really interesting, unique time. One, the agency had not had a permanent president in almost 6 years when I was confirmed. So a Senate confirmed president had not been here. And we entered, the Biden administration entered and landed in the midst of the COVID crisis. And so we were also facing a fairly significant situation where a number of the government mortgage programs were seeing high delinquencies because borrowers were really, still experiencing the stresses of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we were really working in that mode of trying to get relief and get programs put in place to support us through that time. And so it was a really interesting time to join the agency. There had been a lot of stability in the staff that was here, but we landed here really knowing that we needed to recenter Ginnie Mae on our mission. We were created and chartered by Congress for a very explicit mission to serve the most underserved communities and ensure that liquidity and capital flows in the secondary mortgage markets to support those communities. And so my number one focus was making sure we have an equitable housing finance system that meets the needs of all Americans, strengthening the work that we've been doing and supporting all of the agencies that we support, FHA, VA, tribal and rural mortgage programs, and really make sure that the institutions that are our major counterparties in this space are strong. So we've really been focused on an agenda that is surrounding those particular issues.
One thing that I think is really interesting, President McCargo, is you've spent your career in this area. Are you heartened by how far we've come, or are you disappointed by the fact that these wide disparities still exist? Because this really has been a personal mission for you throughout your career.
I've been doing this work. I've worked in every aspect of housing and housing finance over the last 25 years. So I've actually done the work, and now I get to lead the work. My roots are mostly in policy and finance. And I have had a passion for ensuring more equitable outcomes for all Americans. And most importantly, home ownership, which is, as you know, a key wealth building tool in our country, is one that we have seen deep disparities that still persist today, and huge gaps along racial lines, along gender lines, that have been just in my DNA and in my goal set for my career, is to be able to do whatever I can to make an impact there and close these gaps that have long lived for various reasons. But I think there's a real opportunity. And because of the focus of the Biden administration on equity as a day one piece of the overall agenda of this administration, that we have an opportunity. And I'll also just add that the uniqueness of my role now as a woman of color, heading an agency like Ginnie Mae, working alongside other women and women of color. It is unprecedented and historic to have the HUD secretary, a Black woman, the FHFA director. We work very closely with them. They oversee Fannie and Freddie. We have the head of Fannie Mae is a Latino woman. All of these, the head of our Federal Housing Administration, the housing commissioner, is a woman. This is unprecedented. This has never happened before in history, where you have women at the cornerstone who are thinking and focused on equity and ensuring that we are getting the job done on affordability. I just feel like this is a moment that we never had and that we may never have again. And I think we all feel that urgency to work together cooperatively and really just try to move the dial here in every way that we can, pulling all the levers that we have at our disposal.
On an execution basis, is there much difference? I mean, certainly symbolically, it's very important, and you can't be what you can't see. But how do you think the focus is shifted to have all of these powerful women in these roles in the housing apparatus?
I think it feels to me like we have such great alignment on the bigger picture for the housing finance system of America. We have obviously expertise in all aspects of housing, from every corner of whether it's homelessness or the housing finance system. You've got women running parts of agencies that are responsible for all of it, the entirety of it. This is America's housing market is a huge vehicle of our economic power. And so I think the alignment and thought, the ability to work together, the collaboration that has happened. I do know from talking to past Ginnie Mae presidents, past colleagues that have had these roles, that we are working together in ways that we have not before. And we have examples of that from the work that Director Thompson at the FHFA and I have done together last year around the liquidity and capital rules for the non-bank mortgage system. We worked so closely together, and our staffs. And we've also signed historic memorandums of understanding. There's more data sharing happening. So a whole host of ways in which we're working together in kind of an all-of-government approach to housing and our needs that I don't think we've ever seen before. Again, that to me are those are the most critical pieces.
Can I ask what attracted you to this sector in the first place?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually, in my career, started out, I used to work in banking. And I also—
You were at JP Morgan Chase for a while, right?
I was at JP Morgan Chase, but even in my early career, I started out of college. I was working in banking. My first job out of college, out of undergrad, I was a real estate agent. I got my licensing. And I started working in communities with people, primarily people of color. I have my own story of my family around homeownership that meant a lot to me. And it also helped me to see how critical homeownership can be to changing the entire trajectory of a family. From my own experience, my father was a veteran, got a VA loan for $35,000 to buy a home for my family in the Bronx in New York. And then my parents went on to use equity that they built up in that to buy us a home in the suburbs of New York and raise us there. They also were able to support us in putting down payments on our first homes in our early 20s, me and my siblings. I mean, you could see, I experienced in my own life what a difference access to homeownership meant to our family. It gave opportunities for us to live in certain neighborhoods, to be educated in a system that my parents thought were really safe, and they wanted to make sure we had access to. And so all of those dynamics are just formative to me for my career. And then from my early banking and real estate, just helping other families get into homeownership was a real important thing to me, because I knew what it meant for me. The other piece of I'll just say pivotal moment for my career was the work, in '07 and '08 when the housing crisis happened and the Great Recession occurred. What I saw, I stood in a place where we were working on the ground in communities that were facing incredible foreclosures and loss of homeownership, loss of wealth, trying to stand up programs to save those people, save those homes during what was a real just tragic time. And that really had a disproportionate effect on families of color. So I saw the stripping of wealth and all that was happening during that time. And I was sitting in a seat at the time where I was working with the Treasury and others to try to stabilize things. And that was a real formative moment for me in my career, recognizing that we have to make sure that our system can support all people, all communities in a way that is fair and equitable, and we cannot leave anyone behind. And so that's been my focus all along, and everything I've done since then.
It's interesting, the '08 crisis, there have been some concerns about not a full repeat. Obviously, we've had regulation come out of it, but with the failure of Silicon Valley Bank, for example, do you feel like we've learned the lessons of '08, or are there flags for you, warning flags that give you pause?
I'd say we are in such a better position now, and the system is stronger from what we learned and legislation that went into place, regulation that went into place since 2008. That I would just say that this moment, while it's significant and it is a stress on the banking system and other parts of the ecosystem, we're in a very different place. This is a very different situation, and companies are stronger, companies are well capitalized, banks are, the liquidity is flowing in the system, access to credit is still there. We also have not seen the deterioration in home prices and some of the other things that we experienced back then. And so I do think that this is a very different time. It's a stressed time nonetheless, but I do think that a lot of the support that was put in place through different programs over the years, and the way that we saw the response in the early part of the pandemic in 2020 and everything that went into play, that this administration has carried out since, to ensure that there was a good recovery and that people were not losing their homes. We've seen low foreclosure rates. I mean, those things are all, and we still have a very strong market. We saw during the pandemic, people buying homes, a lot of refinancing that went on. People got unprecedented low rates during that time. And so now I feel like we're kind of on the brink of that recovery period. But also a time that is very where we're trying to stabilize things for the future and make sure that the systems that are there to support people are intact.
Let me just ask you a few quick more questions. One is the affordability challenge. You mentioned getting a mortgage in your 20s. Very few people in their 20s now get mortgages. The idea of a starter home really is something that's being put off to the 30s and beyond. How do we resolve that, given what's the housing stock, the prices? It seems like an intractable challenge.
Yeah, I mean, affordability is one of the biggest challenges of our time. Our young people that, are in their young 20s, people are buying homes later in life, forming households later in life, getting married later in life. I mean, things that are quite different than when I was growing up. And, our purpose and our goals under this administration, we are here to help expand access to mortgage credit in affordable ways through, whether it's the FHA having a lower down payment program, VA having 100% financing for veterans to be able to enter homeownership. Those government programs are designed to make it more affordable. We still have significant issues with our supply in our country's housing supply. That is having a lot of pressure on costs and prices, and that continues to make affordability a huge challenge. And now, obviously, we have high interest rates that mount on top of that to make it even more difficult for folks to access homeownership. So our goal: expanding access, strengthening the system, and making sure that the institutions that are supposed to be are offering these government mortgage loans and people have access to credit and can buy a home, again, with low or no down payment programs that government programs offer. And also just ensuring that we have, that we are supporting, low and moderate income households, first-time home buyers who are often younger people, Again, those are the populations that we are built to serve in the government mortgage programs, and it's really, really crucial that we have a system that people know they can access safely, and that we can help do what we are able to do from the financing side to make housing more affordable across this country, so people have that opportunity to get on the first rung of home ownership towards wealth building.
And let me end, President McCargo, I bring it back to you because people say it takes about a year to get truly a feel for the job. What do you know now that perhaps you didn't know then? And I think it's always, you never quite know what it's like to lead an organization like this until you get into it. What has surprised you, and what you might have even done differently knowing what you know now?
Yeah, it's been, and I feel like I'm still, it's evolving every single day. It's really, I don't know that it's surprising. I will say, as I said earlier, the people that I'm working with, and the fact that that this group of women have come together and are working side by side, that I know that has just been something we've all been reflecting on a lot, especially with Women's History Month, coming out of Women's History Month, Black History Month, being the first woman of color in this role. I'm just reflecting on, it's been not surprising, but it's just been so wonderful to see the warmth and welcome that many people that we have to work with across this ecosystem, whether it's CEOs at the different companies that are counterparties of ours, to the trade associations we work with. Everybody has been incredibly supportive. And I would say that just the level of collaboration, the ability to kind of listen, and people really understand and appreciate, that we are listening and that we are making sure that the things we are doing that have an effect on other parts of the mortgage ecosystem, that we're taking that into consideration, and we're trying to stabilize things in places where they're not stable. And so that's been the most interesting. The other thing I would just note, there were just things happening, and again, a lot of this is the macroeconomic environment playing out, that did surprise me. Like at the end of the year, we saw some real stress in one of our programs, the reverse mortgage program, which helps seniors tap equity in their homes. And some of the participants in that program were facing some distress, and that came a little bit as a surprise, just the level of connectivity that these issues had to some of the broader issues that we're seeing play out in the system. And I think just that awareness and our focus on making sure that we're stabilizing, that's what we're here to do. There should be sustainability and stability, and that consumers are our number one focus, is just making sure, even in the secondary market, we're removed from consumers, but just making sure that everything we do, we understand the consequences and the impacts of those decisions that we're making and the policies that we're making on the people and the communities that we are here to serve.
And the speed.
And that kind of focus, kind of at the top of the agenda all day, every day, really keeps our eye on the ball. We understand our why. We know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we are making decisions that we think are best and most sound for the American people.
And the speed of the interest rate hikes during your tenure, that's hard to deal with. That's been like from 0 to 60 in such a fast time. So you're not, when you look forward, help us see around the corner as to what's next. Are you worried about that? Just, whether it's the interest rates or, when you sort of look out to the next 12 months, what advice would you give us, or even thoughts as to what's on your agenda?
Yeah, I think, again, with affordability as one of the major challenges, and we're in this inflationary environment, housing plays a huge role in everybody's experience with inflation. Housing inflation is huge. So everything costs more that it takes to run a household. Rents are more, cost more, everything is more expensive. I really do hope, as we look at, and as things get stabilized and begin to move forward, that we do see interest rates moderate and go down in the mortgage space. We're already starting to see a little bit of that. I know there is a lot of concern about a larger recession. A lot of work has been done by the administration to really try to, deal with all the different inflationary costs, and obviously rising interest rates is one of the ways to mitigate that. But I do think that, with all that we've seen in the last month or so, that we'll start to see some moderation on that, and that we're hopefully going to land well on our feet, and that we'll continue to see people gainfully employed. And frankly, one of the things I would like to see is just, if we could really get a hold on costs, that we start to see real improvement in what it takes to build affordable housing, and have more affordable inventory available to more people, so that we can make homeownership a reality for more people, especially people of color, as we talked about, being well behind the rest of the population.
So, President Alanna McCargo, thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much.